Boss fights. The concept of one sole enemy being the strongest in the room. The end-all be-all. Whether it's preventing you from saving the princess, a cosmic deity about to cause the end of the world, or even just a brigand stopping you from getting your next in-game paycheck. From your standard goblin warrior to the reincarnation of the devil himself. It's no secret that video games tend to have varying types of boss enemies regardless of the genre. I usually tend to dislike a lot of boss designs in most of the games I play. This stems from either one or two things: invincibility phases, or being unable to hit the enemy at any given point. Yes, there is surprisingly a difference between the two. Also, damage attenuation, but that's a Warframe exclusive problem and a whole nother video in its own right. A lot of games perform a combination of the two, forcing the player to sit around and wait until the next chance to strike, with invincibility phases implying a boss gains it at a specific point versus a boss just being immune to damage from the start and having the player open up a weak point that can be damaged at a later part of the fight. Depending on the game, this can result in seconds of downtime, slowing the pacing of a game down to a halt. Now, is this inherently bad boss design? Not necessarily. I believe that the player should always be attentive while playing, and bosses exist to do just that. However, there are times where the window to hit an enemy is shorter than the grand spectacle they put on afterwards. This is actually very prominent in the Mario games, where the trope is hit a boss 3 times while the game makes sure that there's an attack from the boss after each hit. These are fine. Mario games are fairly easy, and the time frame to hit most bosses are usually very generous. However, when a game introduces a boss where I have to wait around 15 to 20 seconds to deal damage to, I tend to get a little bored. I'm all for slowing things down in a fight to collect my bearings and focus on the task at hand, but when the entire fight is more waiting than actual gameplay, then I start getting annoyed. Now, bosses that have you make your way towards them in order for you to deal damage are fine. That at least has some gameplay tied to it, and there's next to no downtime. But if a boss is in attacking range and I hit it but nothing happens, I'm almost immediately turned off. Look, I can come to terms with playing the boss's game and waiting around for 20 seconds, but I would much rather have the boss design similar to the Genesis Sonic the Hedgehog games. Bosses that are always vulnerable at any given moment and can be hit multiple times. Also, bosses with no invincibility phases or grand spectacle attacks that take 15 seconds to do. Now, granted, if this was implemented into modern 3D games today, most significant boss fights would be equivalent to the strength of a wet piece of toilet paper. Intimidating characters seen throughout the story could just be one shot due to how overpowered the player is by the time they fight them. Bosses need to have invincibility because of this. They need to be powerful and significant enough for the player to remember, whether it's through difficulty or mechanics the boss puts you through. Though innate difficulty being a boss's sole significance is its own can of worms, and I can happily go over that another time. But I personally find it tiresome when an entire boss's design is centered around waiting for the next chance to strike. Unfortunately, as far as I know, these types of boss fights are here to stay, and there's not really much we can do about them. This is why when a boss fight doesn't have any of these elements, only then will a particular battle stick out to me, which is the case for our woman of the hour here. Hello everyone, my name is Rune, and before we get started, I would appreciate it if you left a like on this video and consider subscribing afterwards. This is my first ever commentary style video like this, so I hope I do well enough for you guys to enjoy it. Without further ado, here's why I think Jean 4 from Bayonetta 1 is the best boss fight in my opinion. This video contains spoilers for the first Bayonetta game. This is your one and only disclaimer, so you have been warned. This video also contains opinions. Ooh, scary, I know. My opinions are not meant to convert, sway, or convince anyone in any way, shape, or form. You as a human being should be capable of coming to your own conclusions without the help of a YouTuber saying so. I am making these videos to be recorded as a sort of diary to talk about all the games that I love. A love letter to my childhood, if you will, as I replay, discover, and experience new games for the first time. I welcome any and all constructive criticism on these videos and will do my best to address any mistakes I make in the pinned comment below if there are any. With that all out of the way, let's get into it. Jean is a fantastic rival to Bayonetta in the first game. Her purpose is to help Cereza reclaim her memories through the active act of what the kids like to call nowadays rage baiting, to which Bayonetta sadly falls for each and every time. I don't want to touch on their interactions too much before this fight, so I'll briefly summarize everything up to this point. Jean, an Umbra witch that is under the mind control of the Lumen Sage, Balder, repeatedly encounters Cereza throughout her amnesic journey, and every time these two meet, Cereza remembers a part of her past, significant or not. There were 3 fights between the witches that occurred before this one. The first one happened in a flashback that Bayonetta had upon seeing Jean shortly after arriving in Vigrid. The second one also happened in Vigrid, which spanned across the old settlements of the Umbra Witches, and the third one took place on a sinking airplane in the middle of the ocean. After each fight, Bayonetta experiences a flashback to her past and remembers more and more about what truly happened 500 years ago. Who is this mysterious red figure that keeps appearing? And why is she so familiar? Jean essentially acts as the key to helping Cereza remember who she is. She was brainwashed by Baldur, Cereza's father, specifically to lead her to him, atop the highest point on the island of wealth, Isla del Sol. The only important thing to remember here is that these two characters are friends. Best friends even. They were friends 500 years ago solely because Jean knew that Bayonetta would become the strongest Umbra Witch due to her defectivity. And although brainwashed, Jean takes extra care to make sure that Cereza has enough puzzle pieces to make it to this island. Her alliance with the angelic monsters though is deemed as questionable since she doesn't naturally come off as brainwashed throughout the story. She looks as though she's working of her own accord, having common goals in mind with Baldur rather than being under his control. But I digress. So, an extremely long Fantasy Zone minigame later, and Bayonetta is on Isla del Sol, only to be greeted by the Platinum Witch herself on arrival. The two exchange quips before Jean goes off on a recap as to who Bayonetta is and why she should be killed. The daughter of an Umbra Witch and a Lumen Sage. This exposition eventually leads to Jean threatening to level the entire island. Missiles were launched as a power move, but this was fortunately thwarted by the epitome of plot armor himself, Luca. Seriously, dude, this guy dies like 15 times in this game. I don't know how he's still alive. He steals the device Jean was using to launch the missiles and drives off the side of the building, unfortunately met with one of the missiles flying around, blowing him and a young Cerecita to smithereens. Upon seeing this, Bayonetta is taken aback. Her past self alongside her faithful Cheshire, gone forever it seems. And while this doesn't enrage her, it is a clear sign that this is no longer a game anymore. And so, the battle begins. Usually most enemies and bosses in Bayonetta are the angelic monsters you come across 99% of the time, but this time, it's none other than an Umbra Witch, specifically your other Umbran half. Jean is a direct clone of Bayonetta when it comes to her moveset, showing how directly equal she is to Cereza in both technique and power. She comes with the same punches and kicks as Bayonetta. The only difference is that you cannot activate Witch Time after dodging these attacks. You can only be rewarded after dodging the Wicked Weave finisher she does, or the Wicked Weave moves themselves. Jean has a lot of special tricks up her sleeve too, because it wouldn't be a rival fight if there wasn't a little bit of unfairness here. Also, side note, if my Bayonetta seems to have a bright yellowish tint on her in some of this footage, no she doesn't, you guys are just colorblind. Jean can summon the various demons that Bayonetta has also made a pact with, notable ones being Gamora, Scolopendra, Phantasmaranea, and Hecatoncheir. She also has Madame Butterfly with her punch and kick finishers. And to my knowledge, she can also swap weapons to match the loadout that you have on Cereza. Since I was using the Sharaba here, whenever Jean would be far away, she'd close the distance with a lunge forward with the blade. Jean will also prompt Bayonetta to engage in a clash with her as a quick time event. The two will engage in either kicks or Madame Butterfly punches until one witch wins. Jean can do this at any time, but she uses it fairly modestly in the first segment. The one thing that I love about this boss fight in particular is that Jean utilizes her invincibility in the correct way when it comes to a boss fight. Rather than having long segments where she's unable to be damaged, she will instead sometimes block Bayonetta's attack after being overwhelmed by a bit. This does not transition to a phase, but instead resets the fight back to neutral. If the player is mindlessly mashing here, they will be punished by any one of Jean's attacks. This is similar to how No More Heroes' boss design works, except with a lot more freedom on when you can hit the enemy. The fight persists on one of the many rooftops of these skyscrapers, with missiles launching in the background periodically. The environment is also destructible here, with many windows breaking whenever you interact with them. And around the time where Jean's first health bar is depleted, the building begins to collapse, smashing into another building with wings that jet out. The significance of this building is unimportant to the fight as a whole, but I'll go over it later after I finish covering the fight. It is important to remember that it is here as a reminder that this is property owned by the Ithavolt group, which is a nice bit of world building. Overall, a very good set piece for the start of the fight. Upon crashing down, Bayonetta kicks a burning Jean, ridding her of her iconic clothes. With a graceful backflip, she lands before Bayonetta, her hair rushing to conceal her, glistening in white and gold, platinum illuminated in the dull moonlight. donning an outfit identical to Ceresa's. You are reminded of who you're fighting before swiftly returning to combat. This entire cutscene here had me in awe when I first played this fight. Oh my days, dude. Not only is this my favorite look for Bayo in Jean 1, but the setup for this is absolutely amazing. No other rival fight that I've played has truly made me feel as though I was fighting my equal. But Jean wastes no time making that apparent during her final fight. The two witches make use of the full moon to activate Witch Walk, causing them to defy gravity and stand on the side of this massive building. The moon could be seen being full in the cutscene prior to this, but it's still very cool to see these two fighting on the side of a giant skyscraper. Most locations within Bayo 1 have you traversing through old Vigrid settlements and rarely make use of urban environments. So seeing a fight of this caliber take place across multiple towering buildings makes it all the more memorable. The fight continues, this time with Jean's gimmick here being that she will call a missile to hit Bayonetta. This can be avoided with a QuickTime event and results in Bayonetta and Jean playing hot potato with a goddamn missile. Upon succeeding, Jean will be domed upon the head with said missile and the fight will continue. By now, it will be a good time to bring up the music used for this boss fight. The name of the song is called Blood and Darkness, which is a reference, or rather a continuation of the first song that plays when you fight Jean in the present, Red and Black. Aside from the obvious context clues that you can make to determine who's which color, the name of the song is actually quite beautiful in its own right. Blood symbolizing the blood, sweat, and tears Jean had to go through in order to safely seal away Cereza, and darkness alluding to the hundreds of years Bayonetta has spent in limbo, with only now being the time that she stepped out and into the light, leaving that darkness behind her. The symphonic melody of the song only proceeds to intensify. A choir can be heard chanting what is only an angelic hymn, while loud and bolstering horns can be heard amplifying this record. If you're fast enough, violins can be heard on the reveal of Jean's true outfit, which is what happened to me the first time. This highlighted the reveal a lot more to me, as I personally find violins to be one of the most emotional instruments one can hear in music. The intensity of this track heightens the stakes of this fight, and is a perfect song that fits the finale between these two witches. After nearly depleting Jean's second health bar, she hops onto a missile. You're given a QTE to jump atop as well. The fight continues across a missile that is blasting in between the various buildings within this man-made island. Nothing gimmicky happens here, with the set piece being the arena of the fight itself. After depleting her health some more, the missile crashes onto a building and the two resume atop another missile. The fight continues as normal until the final transition. The two serve face before jumping onto a very distinctive building, which I'm going to call Waterfall. Waterfall is the last place where the fight will take place as you finish off Jean. The building is uniquely gorgeous, hosting a flowing waterfall on its sides and a fountain surrounded by washed out golden glass. The glass is brightly lit up and serves to be the camera's main focus when you walk on the walls here. Oh yeah, the building itself is a dynamic battlefield that can change at any given time depending on where Jean goes. This is by far the most memorable part of the fight and one of the most innovative fights I've seen across the games I've played. Regardless of where you are, that gold lighting is going to be there reminding you that this is Jean's final stand. The environment here also houses destructible items, mainly patio furniture. Outside of serving as a way to recover in-game resources, these chairs and tables add to the small idea that there is, in fact, life on this soulless island. The fight pursues on, this time the gimmick being that Jean's Wicked Weave QTE will persist for another instance, adding to the difficulty of her health getting lower. After struggling a bit more, with one final hit, the Platinum Witch is finished, and you have bested your Umbran sister. It's over. Jean is laid out before Cereza, defeated. Without going too much into the lore, Bayonetta repeatedly saw Jean as an enemy throughout her flashbacks, but as she regained more of the pieces back, this was clearly not the case. The reason why Jean stabbed Bayonetta was to seal her away, protecting the left eyes of the world. And after viewing the glyphs held within the gem that was used to seal Bayo, reading Cereza and Jean, everything is clear to her now. She has regained all of her memories, and with that, Jean's duty is fulfilled, having no need to help Bayonetta anymore. With this, she threatens her, even now, before eventually saving her, by launching her off of Waterfall before a stray missile explodes on her, seemingly killing Jean. Before Bayonetta is given time to grieve, she is scared by Luca. Don't worry, Cereza, I'd scream too if I seen someone with that much plot armor. And by this point, this pretty much sums up the entire fight. I do want to highlight a couple of key individual points that I didn't go over in the recap because I find some of them pretty cool. And I'm also going to go over some of the things that I don't like about the fight because while I find this fight to be very amazing and beautiful, it's still far from perfect. And I'll go over some of the things that I wish that would be done instead. So Platinum Games released an official blog way back in like 2010 talking about the design behind the buildings in Bayonetta, and I think that this blog is really cool because Shirai here like goes over like the importance of designing these buildings, making sure how they stand out and whatnot, and I think that this is a pretty cool piece of official media when it comes to games like this. Right here we have like the Ithavoll building. This is the main building, the centerpiece of Isla del Sol, but this is not the focus for this part. I want to talk about the two buildings that appear within Jean's fight. So we have the Galahorn Strategic Defense Initiative building, which is the building that you crash into on the first part of the fight, which it has the wings that like jut out after the building crashes into it, signifying like an idle mode versus a defensive mode, like, oh hey, everybody be on alert. I think that that's really cool. So design behind the building, it's very, very distinct, very unique and whatnot. One thing that I'd like to note here is that the author here says that he wanted to go with a more mechanical like view around the building, like for the entirety of it, and then having the building be concrete on the bottom. I think that that's a really neat piece of like world building design, going to show how like man-made the island is and whatnot. I think that that's actually really, really cool. And then another cool piece about this building is that when the wings jut out, they actually have angelic text on them. And the text reads, "Our fate rests on the wings of divine providence," which is really cool and adds even more to the whole world building aspect of not only the Ithavoll group, but the Lumen Sages themselves. It's just really cool. I really appreciate stuff like this when developers add even more lore to their environments around them. But obviously, the main highlight here is the final part where the Jean fight takes place, which is known as Jean's last stand, right? So they said that he wanted to make the building stand out, and he did so by making the glass not only reflective and show light, but also golden as well. And I really like this because not only do I like gold, but it makes it pop in a way that isn't like too loud or anything, because the gold is essentially washed out and it's more like leaning towards like a little bit of like sort of bronze and whatnot, but you could still see that it is like there. And also the camera pans on it because they want you to focus on the fact that this location is important despite it being like just a random building on this island. Also, the fact that like there's just a waterfall that like flows throughout the entirety of this building is absolutely amazing. And you don't see it on this fight because you need to be on the edge of the fight here, which it rarely takes place on, but water like goes all the way down throughout the building, and it's very, very nice. It's very, very cool. You see the patio furniture here and whatnot, all the buildings and whatever. And although like this building could just be seen as like a high-end suite within like a hotel or whatnot, it still sets the tone for how important of a boss fight is. Because like conventionally speaking, this building design is like weird, because why would you have like a roof be as thin as this and whatnot? But from the inside you can see like there's an elevator, and it eventually leads out onto this open door. Actually, no, the doors that you exit to are on the sides here. The windows are supposed to be like a set piece for when you leave the elevator so that you can see the fountain and whatnot. But overall, I just think that this like entire like stage design, the fact that it's dynamic, because essentially it's just the x-axis and the y-axis, and they take use of both planes to make the fight like a lot more dynamic and interesting and whatnot. And it's so cool. I really love interactive locations in video games. I think that it's pretty cool. I think that it's a great use of physics and whatnot. And again, this is overall one of the best set pieces within the game next to the Ithavoll group building, and I just love it so much. So yeah, now this boss fight isn't exactly perfect, but sadly the one thing that I would change about it isn't going to happen, because the second game exists and the third game exists as well. And the one thing that I would want for this fight to change is for Jean to actually die at the end of the fight, because I don't know if you guys know this or if you've played Bayonetta or whatnot, but not a single important character to the story, even the unimportant characters to the story, die. Not even fucking Baldur. You shoot him in the head with goddamn lipstick, for crying out loud, and he only only dies at the beginning of the second game after you beat whatever the freak of the boss's name. And to me, my biggest thing that I hate in video games are fake character deaths, because death is such an important thing in both media and in real life. And if you're going to kill a character, have them stay dead. And if the character is like beloved a lot and whatnot, like sure, that's fine, you could bring them back and whatnot, but it means a lot more significantly and is a lot more of a power move if a character dies and stays dead. Like Luca not dying because like he's the comedic joke character and has plot armor, that's fine. But Jean's a significant part of the story and appears multiple times to remind Bayonetta of who she is. So I think that it would be best to have a character like her actually die, which would make the whole like her being an unlockable character kind of hit a little bit more differently. Cause like, oh dude, I don't know, I just hate fake character deaths, and I think that like this is the one solely bad thing about this fight, outside of like, you know, some aspects of the difficulty. This fight is hard when you play it on hard mode. It's very unforgiving on the quick time events, and Jean can combo the fuck out of you, dude. It's insane. But other than that, the boss fight is virtually perfect in my opinion. Everything works together well, everything clashes together well, it's very thematic, it's very beautiful, and I just love everything about it. And that's the end of this video. Hopefully I did well for my first commentary style video like this. I was super nervous making this script and editing this entire video. So do let me know in the comments how you feel about this. Do you agree that Jean is also the best boss in gaming history? Or do you disagree and have another boss that you could put up in the comments that I could go over as well? I do want to make more videos like these about the games that I play, so do expect more of these in the future. And as always, big shout out to my channel members on screen right here. Members get access to my videos a day early and an exclusive role in my Discord server. And if you want to support me directly, consider buying me a coffee. It helps keep me well fed and it gives me motivation to keep doing videos like these. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to leave a like and let me know what you thought below. And as always, I've got to get started on the next one. I'll catch you guys later. Bye bye.